Hello, everybody. This is Monday, July 31st, last day of July, and we're going to go through Zacks leading biotechnology industry stocks. Fascinating story. Uh, has been an industry that's been around for a long time, but the last 10 years from about 2014, we've seen a huge surge in IPOs and capital investment into the business. And we're now exiting fully the COVID pandemic. So the question we want to ask ourselves is where are the leading biotech stocks now after 10 years of this compression through the bubble? And now we're out of the other side with a mixture of very large companies and one's names of small companies that are succeeding now that you may not know. So great subject for learning more in detail. So we're going to go through three parts. One is just an introduction to the leading biotech stocks that Zacks has found and will put in front of you. The other is a five-part DuPont analysis, return on equity and margin analysis for the leading biotech stocks, so we can get an appraisal of how they should be pricing on their fundamentals. And then finally, we'll get into the market caps and price performance of these, quote, new age biotechs, the names you don't know, the companies that have emerged over the last 10 years. So this is how we'll do it. And first off, I want to point out that, as we always do, these are the views of me, John Blank, PhD, and they're not necessarily the views of Zacks Investment Research. Please read this at your leisure. Okay, so introduction to Zacks leading biotech stocks. Great subject for those of us looking for growth and income out there in the future. So let's get going. Number one, we've got a couple definitions, one from the American Chemical Society, the other from European Federation of Biotech that came from the OECD. And this is going to give us definitions of what biotechnology is. Now, I just want to focus over here on all the different branches of biotechnology that are incorporating all these different companies. It is extraordinary how many names there are here, and my best advice to you is to Google these names and learn their definitions over time. For example, down here you see bioinformatics. What that is a scientific subdiscipline that uses computer technology to collect, store, and disseminate data on biotechnology, particularly DNA and amino acid sequences. So that's using computers to collect those. Nanotechnologies in the submolecular level. Viral vectors, where you're studying how to put and treat genes themselves. Over here, you've got the DNA, here's the proteins, here's processes, fermentation, reactors, leaching, desulfurization, acting in more of a chemical process. And then over here, you've got the cell, the tissues, and all the vaccines and the embryos. So amazing. Just sit here and collect your mind around these subjects. Then come over here and look at these definitions and how broad they are. And then come back to here again and realize it's really something that has just immense segmentation of activity that is going to be very important for you to just grab a hold of these words, not be afraid of them, and learn what they mean, like I did with bioinformatics. Okay, so this is from the Ernst & Young Biotechnology Report in 2022. This is both European and US capital raised over here, and early stage VC investments, venture capital investments over here. So this will be the number of deals in terms of venture capital investments. You can see they are all the way up into the 100, 700, 600 over the last 3 years. And you can see the capital raises really picked up towards the end of the 2014, 2015 period. So like I said, it's this last 10 years that this industry has really exploded in terms of IPOs and capital raised. Over here, you can see that we went from basically 25 billion a year to 100 and 110 billion a year. So 4 times the investment now in this bubble period. Now we're on the back end of it. So huge ramp. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 2021, 9, 10. So no question about it. This is all cycling in over the last 10 years. Now, down here, I just want to point out here, Massachusetts, Northern California, Southern California, New York, New Jersey are kind of where it's all at in the United States. And over here, it's Sweden, the UK, France, Israel, and Germany, and Switzerland, and Denmark, and Norway. Basically, North European countries that this is happening in So bicoastal in the United States and basically Northern European here. And it's over the last 10 years that this has really become a thing. Now, the problem for all of us is you IPO 650 firms a year for 5 years. That leaves us 2,500 firms. How on earth are we supposed to invest in this if we're not venture capital people? So that gets us to the subject of publicly listed firms, and that's where we're going to head next. Okay, so keep in mind, this is forward 12-month revenue charts for the leading listed biotechs. Now, here the really big ones are. You can see this is the biggest one of all is Amgen. I left at the top, and then Gilead comes next. Vertex is a classic Boston-based roll-up, and you can see they really do function with that 2014 to 2023 period, and they really have been the benefactor. Some things like Gilead definitely probably just recovering from an earlier period where they were much more the darling. Now they aren't. Biogen's had their Alzheimer's drug with their issues, and they've been kind of declining, but still a very strong and big company. But basically, you can see Vertex is the darling. Over here, you've got Novo Nordisk in Denmark. They're the big player there. Regeneron with their ideas, and then Insight. Keep this ticker in mind. They are looking very solid in terms of revenue. And again, this is fundamental stuff, and these are the big companies. Now down here, we're getting into the sub companies that you probably don't know, but are very important, still growing and strong. So Excelis, Alkermes, Halozyme, Acadia, Ascendis in Denmark. So Ascendis and Novo Nordisk, you're going to see this a lot. Big company, Novo Nordisk and Ascendis. I don't know if they have a relationship or not, but you can see here that 2014 ramp. They are another one of like these Vertexes that has been really doing well. So over here, you can see that 2014-15 ramp of these companies. That's what you're looking for. So these names you should be studying closely. Now, these are much smaller names that you certainly haven't heard of. But you can see, again, we're looking for those ramping events. They're actually building real businesses out of this 10-year run. So who are the names? Guardant Health, Intracellular Therapies, Apellis Pharma, Blueprint Medicines, Denali Therapeutics, and Intellia, which is the CRISPR technology. But again, not as strong from a revenue perspective, very, very low revenues, just building very slowly. Probably want to look into a Guardant or an Intracellular. And that, of course, gets you back to the first chart on definitions, trying to figure out which part of these areas are rightly working versus ones that are not. Earnings, forward 12 months. Again, over here, we got Amgen, Biogen, Vertex, and Gilead. The orders are different here for revenue versus first earnings. Keep that in mind. Same here with Regeneron. Regeneron is an extremely profitable company relative to Novo Nordisk and Insight. Down here, again, we're going to see these names that I want to point out. Halozyme, Alkermes, Excelis, Acadia, and Ascendis. Ascendis is probably the one that's doing most poorly on earnings, but the others are actually doing pretty well. And you want to make sure, if you're looking at a stock that's doing this for you, as you're an outside investor, if they're not making money, doing things like this with Vertex, you don't want to be investing. Down here, good example. I threw a new name here that's come out, and you're going to see this all the time. One of the stars that's in this new world is Crystal Biotech, ticker KRYS. And yes, they are actually not making money. You can see this is all these are the really small ones that are not making money, but they're starting to improve now. That's what you want to see with a Crystal there. You can see they're ramping up and moving forward with their earnings estimates. That's what we'd like to see. You don't see that in these really small companies. I'm not sure you want to be in there. So again, from the largest to the next largest to the next to the smallest, keep this in mind. That's our story and how we're going about this. Free cash flow, a little different than earnings, but again, giving us similar messages. So I want to point out, we put a Takeda in here, which is a Japanese firm. They're a little less information, but now we've got them in here. Down here, we've got Halozyme and Excelis. Once again, their free cash flow is very strong. Those are the names you're going to put them in green for a reason, folks. Those are the ones you want to look into. Over here, Axsome Therapeutics sticks out as one that has not been suffering as much as the others here. Which is really concerning as investors. You can see these free cash flows jump up and then fall apart. Sometimes things just don't work out. And this is the problem of trying to invest in this industry at a very small scale level. You just don't know what you're going to get. Okay, earnings pureness. Over here, we've got this Ginkgo Bioworks thing that got rolled up into DNA. You can see they're still around, but that's a new name. Otherwise, we've got these same names. And I'm just going to point out to you, really, earnings pureness can be quite dramatically different. Look what happened to Gilead. Very poor earnings purity versus Biogen, which actually is very strong. Amgen, of course, and Vertex. Vertex is always looking good. Vertex is a very well-run business in Boston. Keep it in mind. All right, so let's get to the next one. Reinvestment rates. Again, in this particular case, reinvestment rates probably don't make a ton. These are all these three are probably not worth much, but let's take a look at Amgen, which is reinvesting in their business versus Vertex, Biogen, and Gilead. So keep in mind that Amgen really is running for the future and they're putting money back in their business. There might be a lot more growth in Amgen than you might think. Total debt. Thing interesting about debt in these types of biotech companies, if the smart money, aka the debt, is not being piled into a company, you probably don't want to be involved. So this is kind of backwards from normal thinking, where we don't want to stay away from all greatly indebted companies. Here, we do want to stay with ones with more debt because they're the ones that the smart money's put the money on. So I put these names over here and the tickers that do play out, and there are having more debt in them. If they have more debt, there's probably more opportunities for these investors, and they're staying with these companies. So keep this in mind. Again, these are the big names, what they're going to know. And down here, the names you're probably not going to know as well. All right, depreciation and amortization. I just want to point out there's the big names. Not a lot of differences, but over here you can see ascending depreciation and amortization out of that period. Of course, these are the people who are really investing and building out capital expenditure and processes. So these, to no surprise, they have a ramping of depreciation and amortization. That is a small company growth effect over these larger companies. And keep this in mind. It's very interesting to understand how this business is being energized by all these little firms, and the big ones are being, carrying the debt and acquiring them, basically. All right, DuPont analysis of these leading stocks. So here we're going to do 5-part analysis. Take a look at 15 stocks or so in 2 sequences. But first off, we're going to go through mainly, we can go through tax burden, interest burden, asset turnover leverage, but really profit, operating margins, and return on equity is what matters for investors. So I put these in red. These are these areas and those areas. And for the most part, I circled what I think I want to show all of us, which is the return on equities of some of these bigger, stronger names. The reason I circled them is you can see if a company that's large can get into a 25% ROE, you're going to basically have a strong, stable, diversified cash flow business. That's what you want to pick up here. There's a lot of differences that can happen here in these businesses. But in general, if you're going to get a 25% ROE from a major company, that's 25% ROE is fairly strong. Over here, we got 7 more names. Should be NVO, and it was NOV, so I got rid of it. That's actually just a mistake on the part of the ticker. Over here, we've got lots of new profit margins. I just want to point out how different these are versus the other ones. So here you can see we've got much lower for like an AstraZeneca, 10% ROEs versus back here where we had 25% for a Gilead and 28%, 25%, 35% for Vertex. Very big story about how a pharma company, largely AstraZeneca, doesn't look a whole lot like a true biotech, but there's not that many of them. So of course you have to pay up front. Return on equity. Let's take a look at a little of these charts. This gets back to what we're talking about, return on equities. I just want to point out, again, you're looking at this 25 to 30 area. Amgen has had a really strong run on return on equity, but in general, they were down here before as well. So Regeneron's a good story. You can see they basically have ramped up, but they're now back in the 20s. And that's typically what you're going to see here, is if there's a lot of noise in these charts. But keep in mind, you can see here, that's really what the story you want to tell you. That's the kind of the opportunity what goes on with return on equity. Okay, so now we get to these new age biotechs. Again, how do we sort these out? I basically think you got to let the market sort it out for you. What I mean by that is take the larger market caps and the stronger price performance and take it in hand as that is your cue that that's what the market likes better. And don't try to second guess the market. Play the market with the market's ideas. Don't have your own ideas unless you're truly into MD or PhD level biotech knowledge and have a lot of teams. You're better off just let the market talk to you, which means market caps first and then the price performance second, and combine them in some way to look in these companies. But you do not know. So let's do that. Number one, market capitalization charts. I put in green here, going from Legend Biotech to Gracell Biotech to Ascendis Pharma to Immunocore, which is just ramping up dramatically. If you see something ramping up in its market caps, you probably want to take a look at it. Here, of course, Ascendis has sunk back in the last few years, but they were this Danish company that has been stronger, still remains a $4 billion market cap company. You have to believe in it. Immunocore now is a $2.73 billion market cap company. Have to believe there's something there. Legend Pharma, this is now a $10 or $11 billion company. Have to know what their technology is when they're ramping like this. Learn what this company does. Gracell, same story. Last 3 years, they're now, very growing their biotech story in some way that you need to understand. But look at here, the Gracell had a long period of ups and downs. This is the problem with trying to invest here, is you do have these big spiky issues and worries when you get into these smaller firms. Price performance. Again, Crystal Biotech looks great. X Biotech had a big bubble and now they're back. Might be an interesting place here. Ascendis, we talked about this company and they've come up a number of times. There they are again. And of course, Immunocore. There they are. Dividend adjusted price performance is looking strong. So you want to look into these green names that I have centered in the right-hand side here and are in green, of course. I want you to pay more attention to that. That's how I'm going about it, folks. Just trying to close down on some names that I might want to look into versus others. That gets to be my last chart, which is, can I use the Zacks price consensus and EPS surprise charts to pick stocks here? The answer is yes, of course I can. Look at Legend. We talked about Legend, and now we got these nice annual estimate revisions for Legend. Here's Crystal. You can see, while they decline year on year, year out to 25, Crystal, whatever this company's doing, it's going to have a big run into 2025 period. Ascendis, we've talked about this company. Again, out in 2025, a huge possibility for this company. Now, down here, you've got other names that are going the other direction. Keep this in mind. You can have names that, for example, here 2022, it looked good, but now it didn't. And now down here, these are just kind of trailing along. And of course, the bubble was over for this stock. So keep this in mind. That's the bubble thing of the COVID pandemic. And then you've got these other charts that are much more stable and look a lot better, particularly Legend and Crystal. Good names here. Ascendis is something that may, if you hold on long enough, turn around. So these three look great. These three are telling you a little bit about what to work on and be aware of in this business. That's it, folks. Thanks for attending. I am the Chief Equity Strategist and Economist of Zacks Professional Services. And if you want to get a hold of these slides, which have the data, you need to get a hold of us. Talk to us in person. And that is the best way to go about a subject like biotech stocks. So 866-794-6065 is our number. Once again, let's do that for you again. 866-794-6065. Also, send us an email, strategycall@zackspro.com, and ask the slides, or find us on the web at www.zackspro.com. We also have a page on LinkedIn at Zacks Professional Services, and Twitter. You can follow us at ZA Tools. Over here is what you need, really, though: the phone number, the email, and the web address. So thanks, folks. I hope you enjoyed this. You really need the slides on a subject like this, but biotech stocks, the leading ones, and how Zacks can help you out, worth talking about.